Oh, that's a good way to start.
Good way to start it.
Just
Sorry
do it
about
in the
that.
microphone. That is fine. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Odum and Andrea podcast. This is a show where we get together and we talk about a book that usually Andrea's read. Well, not usually, all the
Always.
time that Andrea has read. And it's generally somebody that's pretty inspiring, that does some really cool stuff.
Yes.
So we'd like to talk about it and see if there's anything in there that we can incorporate into our lives as we try to, live the best life possible that we can.
Absolutely.
Always learning, always, trying new things, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Sound about right?
It does. It does.
Cool.
Cool.
And today we are talking about this book called Maid, like someone that cleans.
Yeah.
Not made like a made man.
I made it. Yeah.
Yeah. Although maybe she did make it. I don't know. It is by Stephanie Land. And it says hard work, low pay, and a mother's will to survive. And apparently it's a Netflix show.
They made it into a series.
Which means nothing to me because Netflix is garbage now. But that is another thing. I haven't seen a good movie come out of Netflix in a long time.
Indeed.
Anyways. So this would be interesting. Hard work, low pay, and a mother's will to survive. So, I mean, I'll leave whatever I'm thinking this is about because I have no idea what this is about at all whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
And on the cover of it, there's a couple rubber gloves. Let me see if I can put
They're
that up.
yellow rubber gloves.
Yeah, those yellow rubber gloves.
Cleaner gloves. Yeah.
Yeah. So with that intro, I guess I'll just say too, if you like any of the stuff that we do, I think this is our 10th podcast.
I think it's 11.
11th, right? Mm-hmm. It is our 11th. Oh my goodness, it's crazy. But if you want to see any of our old stuff, check out our website odumandandrea.com. So lots of cool stuff on there. And with that being said, why don't you tell us what this is all about?
Okay, so this book is about a mom, and it's obviously a true story because that's what we do here is all true stories.
Do we?
We do.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
It's good to know.
So this takes place in Washington State in a little town called Port Townsend. And so Stephanie, who wrote the book, she's
Stephanie wrote the book. She's also the protagonist or whatever.
Yes,
It's like her life.
It's her life.
Okay.
It's a memoir of this portion of her life. And so basically how she starts the book is she watches her daughter take her first steps in a homeless shelter. So rough way to start. So then it kind of backtracks to go to even just how she got there. So I don't know too much about what happened before she met her daughter's dad. She definitely had she had high school diploma, but she hadn't gone to university yet. I think she was working a bunch of different jobs at the time. And so she really wanted to be a writer, and she had this love for Montana, even though she had never been there. She just had heard it written about so many times, and specifically about Missoula, Montana. And so different books like A River Runs Through It, which...
Oh, that's from Montana?
Yeah. And so
that's a gorgeous movie. Even just like the
Yes.
cinematography.
Yeah.
And a great story too.
And so it was based on a book written by an author that took place in Montana. So she had really romanticized it and had always just wanted to go to Montana.
Is Legends of the Fall in Montana?
I'm pretty sure. I want to say yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's somewhere kind of like... Is Montana like Pacific Northwest-ish?
No.
No, it's central, right? Because isn't it just below like Alberta, Saskatchewan?
It is because one of the main towns that's close to them is Helena, and Helena is in Montana. So yes, It does take place in Montana. You're right.
Right.
Another fantastic movie.
Yeah, that is a great movie. I was actually listening to the soundtrack of that movie the other day.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I have some of those songs on for piano. The soundtrack? Yeah. Oh, yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it because it's little things that I want to play on piano. You know when
that's cool.
Samuel is there right before he goes to war? It's like so sad. He's like they're playing piano or whatever and he's singing.
Yeah. Oh, I want to watch that movie again now. It's so good.
It's a fantastic movie.
Well, it's where we got Tristan's name from.
Yeah, that's where we heard it. Yeah.
I've always loved that name. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So anyway, so she's working like 3 different jobs. She works at like a coffee shop. She does landscaping, just like kind of little odd jobs in this town.
While she's in university.
No, she hasn't gone to university yet. She's
okay,
just
so she's graduated from high school.
High school, but she's in her 20s. Like I think she's kind of like mid-ish 20s at this time. And so she's just been working since kind of high school. I think there's not much. I don't really know much about from high school to when she meets this Jamie, her baby daddy. So
see, there's some stories that are going to be coming from this, but we'll sit patiently and wait.
So she meets him. He doesn't have a high school diploma, and he's working as a cook at the time. She kind of ends up.
But that's fine.
That's fine.
A lot of people now don't have high school and that they're super successful.
Of course, he is not one of those people, but. But so she ends up, he's living in this kind of trailer camper type deal. And so it sounds like it was kind of like a whirlwind.
Sorry, she was or he was?
He was.
Yeah.
And so she ends up moving in with him in this trailer. It was kind of like almost like a whirlwind kind of lust love type thing, I think. And so he's living in this trailer to save money because he wants to go on this like big bike ride, like up and down, I think like the Pacific highway. I forget what the highway is called there, but there was like a big highway.
This is the same even highway that we wanted to to RV down.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So he kind of plans to do that, and so when she's planning to save up to go to University of Montana, she hasn't applied yet, but she has the applications. She's ready to go. Right before he leaves, she gets pregnant. They've been together only for about 4 months, and so he goes on his trip and he comes back.
While she's pregnant.
Yeah, he doesn't even know while he's gone on his trip. She doesn't tell him until he gets back from his trip.
He left and he left and he didn't even know that that he was gonna become a father.
He does not want this baby. He wants her to get an abortion. And he starts getting like verbally abusive with her.
I'm sorry, I just think of that stupid movie, The Dictator. It's like, what are you having, a boy or an abortion? Not to joke around all that kind of stuff, but it's so. Is that The Dictator? I don't know. It's a Sacha Baron Cohen movie. Yeah. It's hilarious. It's
pretty funny.
Anyway, so he wants that,
and she doesn't. Like she wants to keep the baby, and so. She has the baby. He continues to be verbally, mentally, emotionally abusive.
So, sorry, he continues to be? So he's been this whole time, even before he left, just with this baby?
just because of the baby. So kind of his true colors kind of come out when she wants to keep the baby. And he's just a complete jerk.
Well, true colors, but I mean, that's a pretty significant life altering thing. But yeah, of course, it's still 100% yes, true colors. But
he gets to a point where he does, and like she's so bogged down and like no one really believes her that he's like being abusive, because I think verbal and mental and emotional abuse, people I think look at that differently than actually physical, because you can't see it, and so I think it's harder for people to really understand what that is.
Yeah.
And so finally he ends up punching a window in the camper, and the baby's 7 months old at this point. And
so sorry, you fast forward. So
yeah,
they've already had
it's been months and months.
Trying
he's
to be
horrible.
together.
Yeah, and he's horrible to her. So then
they never got married or anything like that.
No. So she calls the cops because she's afraid at this point that he is going to get physical with both her and the baby. And finally it's like she has this proof that someone else can see it as well. So it just really I think validates her.
Right. And when is this? Like what year approximately?
Oh, I don't know what year it is. I think it like early, like 2007, 2008.
Around there? Okay.
Yeah. So, because that's going to lead into it as well. So she leaves. She goes and she lives with her dad for about a month. And that is not a good situation either.
Why is that?
Because her dad and her stepmom, they just don't have a lot of money. So it's really a burden for them to be staying there, because she doesn't have really a job at this point, because she has a 7-month-old baby. So, and then her mom lives in England with her husband. So she doesn't have any help from her mom. So, yes. So she goes to stay with her dad. So the one thing she says when the cops come, she says, the police report that the officer left was a validation that I wasn't crazy. And so she even says like she kept that police report in her purse just so that to help her understand. So
yeah, it's too bad though that I mean, I guess this is what happens when you're in an abusive relationship. I mean, some people, is that you almost kind of convince yourself that you're the one who's crazy. I guess what's that? It's not like gaslighting, basically.
Yes.
Like when you're made to feel as if you're the crazy one.
Yeah.
So it's really is unfortunate that people need to have like that external source of validation, that it gets to be so bad that you even think that, you know, that you're the problem. That's really unfortunate. But I mean, that's kind of the whole. I mean, I'm certainly no expert on the psychology of abuse and what tactics people use to abuse other people. But I think that's definitely one of them, is just taking down someone's complete self-worth and self-opinion of themselves, and
just breaking them down.
Yeah.
So she goes and moves in with her dad, and it's difficult. They don't have a lot of money. So her dad and the stepmom, they start arguing and fighting all the time. It gets to a point where he actually gets violent with the stepmom, and he had never been a violent man before. And so he hits her, or he grabs her, he does something. And so she knows in that moment that she can't be there anymore. And she's like, they're going to ask me to leave because they can't handle me being here. So,
but that's weird though. Like, is it just because it's such a small place?
I think so.
It's babies.
I think so.
All the time,
and
whatever.
There's financial issues because at this point it's like the 2008, and things are like have gone to shit with the economy, and people are losing jobs. Yeah. So she tells her aunt what happens with her dad. Like, her dad was kind of got violent with a stepmom, but the dad had already called the aunt to say, well, Stephanie's going to call you and tell you all this stuff, but she's making it up for attention. And even what happened between her and Jamie, she made it up for attention. So you have this kind of dynamic going on. So her
father is not a good father, basically.
It doesn't sound like it. Like, that's pretty dick move.
Well, it's I mean, that's another form of abuse. I mean, it's just
absolutely,
turning other people against you.
Well, because he's embarrassed about his own behavior. Absolutely,
not wanting to own up to it.
Yeah. So in the meantime, she's trying to get some work. She's doing some landscape work. So she ends up, after her dad kind of kicks her out and she leaves, she goes to a homeless shelter. And so what happens is
it one where she has like a guaranteed bed?
Well, it actually ends up it's like a cabin. So sometimes it's like two families share this cabin, but it's actually just her and her daughter at this point sharing this cabin. And so she can stay there for 90 days until she can get into transitional housing, which is like an apartment complex.
Right.
And so this is what happens. She gets into this apartment complex. There's this.
That's basically like where it might be like $5 a month or something like that, or it's very, very cheap.
It's very, very cheap, and there's a bunch of other people in this kind of same situation there as well. And so her mom at this point ends up coming to town and helping her move.
His mom from Britain
move in. And so she talks a little bit about her mom and how her mom almost like had like a midlife crisis, and that's when she divorced the dad, and she had an affair, and then she divorced the dad, and then marries this English guy.
Did she have a midlife crisis, or did she have an affair?
Well,
and
yeah. So then she ends up marrying this English guy who's only 7 years older than Stephanie is. So she marries this like way younger guy than her, and they move to England. And so she feels like she's lost a mom because of this. Because number one, she's like physically unavailable, but definitely emotionally unavailable.
Oh, so they're not close at all then, I guess.
No, and even so, it's so awful. She's just moving out of a homeless shelter. And so her daughter Mia is at
what do you mean, like from the cabin to the apartment complex?
Yeah, so she's just moving into this transitional housing. Like, she has like no money. She's been through this abusive relationship. So her mom's like, oh, we need to go out for lunch. Like, I'm hungry, let's go out for lunch.
It's like, who's gonna pay for this? I have no money.
So they go out for lunch, and the stepdad is such a dick. He won't even like pay for her meal, and it's like way more expensive than she can
when
really
you
afford.
Eat out, it's not cheap.
And
at
so
all.
she gives what she can because they're just kind of looking at her expectantly, and then she leaves, and she hears her mother's husband say, "Oh, that's the definition of entitlement," and it's like, what the, like, do you not understand what this woman is going through? Like, it's unreal. This family, like, she has no support.
Yeah, it's there's such a lack of self-awareness from so many people.
Yeah.
Especially people that play this whole, oh, you're entitled card, or you're privileged or whatever. Like, you guys, you have no idea what that means.
I know.
And like, look in the mirror, at least in a sense. Like, I mean, they obviously even had money to fly in from Britain, right? And you don't know that your daughter is trying to raise a baby on her own. You know, got a police report because there was an abusive relationship there, is in subsidized housing, was homeless, and you're going to complain that
you can't pay for a $10 burger?
Yeah, or whatever. Well, it's...
I know. It's disgusting. So she talks too a little bit about like Mia's first birthday, and this one really hit home for me because she said she saved up for a month to get her daughter new shoes, and all I could think about was these shoes that I had for Maya. Like she had these like little Robies shoes. They were kind of like the leather bottom shoes. And I just remember like those shoes were so cute, and they were just given to us, I think. And I just always remember, I don't know, it just really reminded me, it's like how lucky, like we did not have a lot of money back when the kids were babies and they were one.
No.
But even like thinking about how she had to save up for a whole month just to get her daughter a basic essential, which was a pair of shoes.
Yeah. Well,
it just really hit home for me.
I think, definitely, for sure. I mean, for us, our situation was, if we had to come up with the money to buy anything, we would have had to have been like that. But as it was, is we were just living off of student loans.
Absolutely.
And student line of credit. Yeah. So it's just like, okay, well, we have to do this now. We have to get out student loans. So let's just worry about it later. Yep. And, lo and behold, 20 years later, we're still paying off student loans. But hey, that's another story. But yeah, it's absolutely, like, if you've never been really poor, like, you just have no idea of like just something like getting a pair of shoes, how difficult that can be.
Yeah.
But then you get used to thrift shopping, and hopefully you have a nice circle of people that are around you that you can get hand-me-down clothes and all that kind of stuff too. Because we were lucky enough to get a lot of people that, they have kids or whatever, and you just hand down clothes. And that's what we did too. When the kids are done with it, you just hand them down and just kind of keep that cycle going. So yeah.
The transitional housing was really difficult for her to live in because the lady that lived underneath her, even if Mia was just like running, she would like
the broomstick.
There was one woman.
Remember that Jeopardy where it's a Saturday Night Live, it's Black Jeopardy, and they're playing the Jeopardy thing, and then they're like, the broomstick is on the it's like, oh, that sound of the broomstick hitting the ceiling means that we have to finish up, we have to wrap up because we're being too loud. Anyways, it's the same kind of thing.
It's the same idea. And
but yeah, so every time the broomstick, it's just like, what do you do? You just ignore it, or you just talk to them, saying like, listen, there's not much we can do about it. So
there was another mom there, like another kind of single mom who had a young baby, and she tried to commit suicide as well. So it's like not a great place. And so she says, I was moving into a place with rules that suggested that I was an addict, dirty, or just so messed up in life that I needed an enforced curfew and pee tests. Being poor, living in poverty seemed a lot like probation, the crime being a lack of means to survive. So like, because she had to have like regular urine tests, there was a curfew, she always had to show her monthly income statements and exactly what money was coming in and where it was going and why. So that's really difficult. So eventually she
it's one of those things where you have to do what you have to do in order to survive and pull yourself out of it.
Mm-hmm. And then like she also had to go through custody hearings and prove that like Jamie should not have her daughter, and
like at all. Was he trying to get custody then?
Yes,
that's interesting.
He did not want to pay child support. So that, I think that was the reason why.
Not because he actually wanted to raise his daughter.
No, he just did not want to pay child support. And
isn't child support based on how much money you're making? So if he's not making any money, he can't pay child support, can he?
I don't know. I just think it was the point. He didn't want to give her any money. So, but she talks about like the custody fight and how the courts even made her feel like she was a bad mom from taking her child out from a quote unquote stable, home, like nuclear family home, even though this dick was abusive to her. So So she says,
I guess the court's definition and my definition of a stable home is a
little bit different. So she says, somehow it reflected badly on me that I'd removed Mia from a place where I was punished and brutalized until I was curled up on the floor sobbing. So pretty ridiculous. She does win full custody, and he does have Mia does go there, I think, every other weekend, but she has full custody of the daughter.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the one, I guess, bright thing is that most custody hearings, I mean, they usually tend to favor the mother over the father.
Yes.
Like, isn't it something over 80% of custody goes to the mother?
Yeah.
Regardless. So yeah.
And so while she's in transitional housing, she's trying hard to find jobs. So she works landscaping. She can only do that for a specific, obviously, season, right? So then at the same time, she's cleaning preschool, like a preschool. She cleans a preschool.
Like a janitor.
Yeah, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But she can only work 2 to 3 hours a day because that's all she has for childcare. And so even she's explaining for childcare, she has to prove that she has a job. Well, how can you
like
get
you can only get childcare if you have a job?
So how do you freaking work if you it does not make any logical sense to me. So she does what she can.
That's where, like, when you have government programs, there's just so many rules and regulations in order to make sure things are on the up and up.
There's other things we're going to get to that are
which is so frustrating, in that when regular people are trying to access services, they make it so difficult and almost pretty much impossible. But then when you get the higher ups there that are in the governments or want to making policies, they just snap at it. They don't even follow the rules or whatever, and they get all their. It's so corrupt and so disgusting. I don't even want to even think about it because it's. Yeah. It's just so disgusting.
Yeah.
Anyways.
So she is getting this is the amount of child support she's getting from him, $275 a month.
You know, when you're poor, though, that can go a whole lot long, you know, especially if you know how to stretch your money.
I know, but it's just...
Well, I know it's...
Yeah.
But I mean, her rent, she's not paying any rent or very little, so that's a huge help.
It helps. Yeah.
I'm sure she's probably getting subsidized for food with, you know, food stamps or whatever. I don't know exactly how that works in the States. Yeah. Probably like food banks or whatever too. So, I mean, those are your two biggest expenses right there. So...
Yeah. And so she's she's on a wait list for this. It's a rent voucher where it pays for housing costs beyond 30 to 40% of the tenant's income. And so she's trying to get that. You have to take courses apparently for this because you have to know how to talk to the landlord to inform them that you have this rent voucher. Mm-hmm. In order for them to give you this rent voucher, the place that you are living in has to meet all these standards. And so the problem is that a lot of the renters, the lower income renters, it's not up to standards. And then the higher income renters, like the nicer places, they don't want to rent to people that are this thing. So it's difficult. She also has to take this. It's like a subsidy for heating fuel, and so for electricity or whatever. Okay. And so in order to be able to access this program, she had to take this 3-hour seminar on how to be energy efficient. So like how to turn the lights off when you're not in the room and like all these stupid things. Oh, wow. And I'm just like, are you kidding me? Poor people are the ones that know how to save money and what to do and are so frugal.
Well, yeah, I mean, some people are just... Well, maybe, but some people are just stupid. You know, they just like don't think about how things add up energy wise.
Yeah, but she says how degrading.
Or like have the heat on and then the windows open or whatever.
She says how degrading to learn that since I needed money, I must not know how to keep my utility costs low.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's true. I mean, it's like read the room. You gotta know what people. But I guess again, if you're having some type of program or whatever, you just gotta make sure everyone.
Yeah.
You can't assume they don't have time to sit down and interview somebody and like know everything about their lives to know if they're a person that meets, you know, basic common sense standards. So I guess they just decide to teach everybody.
Yeah.
Which you can kind of understand, but at the same time, it's when you're down and out, it's like we've been very, very poor. And I know, like, when you're down and out, the system is like designed to just almost kick you down. And like,
yeah,
just even things like, when you have no money, you can't borrow money because you have no money, because you can't pay, that you're seen as high risk or whatever it is, right? And you think if you have bad credit, well, then you can't get credit because you have bad credit. But it's like, when you have bad credit, that's the time when you need some type of break.
Yeah.
But you can't get it. So it's, and then when you have money, it's like, oh, you have money, let me give you more. And it's like, well, I don't need money now. Thanks a lot. But you kind of understand it from the banks. But I mean, they're in the business of making money. So they want to give money to people that can pay them back. So, but it's when you're low, it's really hard to get up.
Yeah.
But it can be done. And it all depends on how willing, for some people, how willing you are to work hard and to play the game and understand it and crawl yourself out of it.
Yeah.
Not to say that it's fun or that it's easy or that it's not fair. I mean, life isn't fair.
No.
But it's not that it can't be done.
And she says, the other piece of this, though, is like the stigma that's attached. And so she says, I had to sit through several hours of learning how a rent assistance program paid landlords so I could assure them that they'd get paid. To the government and everyone else, it was inherent that they shouldn't trust me. How was I supposed to present myself to landlords as a responsible tenant when I was faced with a wall of stigmas stacked so high? And I think that's really true. Yep. Like, it's really true. So she does find a new apartment. And so she's doing this landscaping work, and she's also taking 2 online classes and then 1 class in person. And her whole goal is to get like an associate of arts degree and then be able to transfer those credits to a 4-year university degree. So she knows education is her way out of it, and she knows what she needs to do. So she's working towards this, and she does get, it's called a Pell Grant, and it was just financial aid for low income students to pay for her tuition. And it did give her extra money as well, like for living expenses. Right. So one of the chapters is called 7 different kinds of government assistance. And so she says, I need 7 different kinds of government assistance to survive. And so, so she has all of these different things for, so she has Medicaid, she has childcare, she has the grant, she has the home heating subsidy, she has she has food stamps, all of these different things. So
this is a really interesting topic, and I haven't done enough thinking and research on this, because I'm split in between my thinking of, people need to take responsibility for themselves and make sure that, they do what they need to do to get work and, to make sure that they can be successful or what have you, versus the government shouldn't be there to just hand everybody everything that they need, regardless of effort. So, but there's some type of happy medium there, where I think like somebody like her who is clearly putting forth the actual effort to try to better themselves. And I think those are the types of people that, yes, you give them that assistance to help. It's not giving it to them. It's like, we're just going to support you for life, and you're just going to just sit on your ass and play video games all day or whatever. But they're actually actively trying to improve their lives. And I think that's the type of assistance that you need to give to people, and find out where people are on their like willingness to try to better themselves. And then, but there's so many people too that are on assistance that are just like, I'm just going to stay on there. And then, like even in Canada now, they're talking about bringing in universal basic income, where everyone's going to get, I have no idea how much, this magic number of money where if you don't want to work, you don't have to work. And then you just get this money, and then you're not contributing to society. You're not helping the economy in any way. You're just adding money to this economy. And then, you have all these issues that are going in where there's all this money in the system. Nobody's actually producing the goods. Prices go skyrocket. And it's like, I don't know, there's got to be some type of balance between the government's responsibility for helping people become better citizens and better adept at actually just taking care of themselves and being a productive member of society versus just giving people money just because, hey, we're socialists now or whatever, we're communists, everyone gets everything. And it's like, okay, anyway, so I'm really having a trouble grasping this, but something like this is like, that's what programs should be for, is to help people that are in these types of positions that just need that push. Because I'm sure we're reading this book now. Mm-hmm. I'm sure you're going to find out they're super successful or whatever. And isn't J.K. Rowling's kind of the same thing where she was like, not down on like, I don't know, right? But just in a hard place, didn't have any money or whatever. I was like, you know what? I'm going to do something that I love doing and I'm going to help break myself out of it. Mm-hmm. Writes her books or whatever. And I'll boom, multi-billionaire or whatever, right? So I love stories like that.
I think the problem, though, is that, and she talks about this in the book, where as soon as you get a job, obviously you have to report all of your income.
Yep.
And so as you increase your income, all of your subsidies decrease. Yep. And so what happens then, though, is it just keeps you in this status quo. So you can never really get ahead because your income is increasing, but all of your supports are decreasing. So you're still at the same point. And the thing is what happens is then you can't save for a rainy day. You can't save for what happens when your car breaks down.
Right.
You can't save for what happens when your kid needs, like this happens, her kid needs surgery in her ears. So
that's in the States because
her daughter, no, it gets paid for because her daughter is eligible for Medicaid, but she herself is not eligible for any type of medical help. So people, you can't get ahead, and she's working she obviously so hard.
Or we're going to find out that she's going to get ahead, so it's not like you can't.
No, but there has to be something where you have to allow people to have some sort of cushion in case some awful shit happens.
Right. Well, then maybe
we'll get to it.
This is a whole other topic.
It is.
Well, no, I'm going to get to this.
Sorry.
This whole other topic of what is not taught to people at all is financial education and financial literacy. Like if there was a thing like, okay, well, you want to save for a rainy day. Okay, well, we're going to take some of your money, or you're going to be allotted 5% every month extra, whatever, that has to go to a specific type of emergency type fund or savings account to be able to save for a rainy day, like you said, and you have to show proof maybe that you're not going to spend it or whatever, or it's in a special type of government account where you could only take it out for certain reasons or whatever, or even the government can even top it up or whatever, right? Kind of like a 401 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So but yeah, I mean, and that's just the whole way that like maybe it's just designed that way to just keep people down, right? Because it's like, I totally get that, your income goes up, well, then you can't be subsidized because you could only have like a certain threshold of money. But is that on the individual to figure out how they can maybe save for a rainy day, even though they don't have very much money? Yeah, I don't know. It's crazy. But anyways, financial literacy is a very important thing as well. But anyways, we're not really talk about that today, but anyways, continue on with this fascinating story. So
she ends up meeting another guy on just like an online dating site or whatever, and then
she has time to date, but not time to save money.
Well, I mean, you have to be able to like have a life. You can't just like work and that's it, right? Like you have to have a life.
No, I'm not saying that, but I mean,
so she meets this guy and she ends up moving in with him, and I think it's not really because like she loves him necessarily, but I think she loves the idea of that family,
more financial stability as well.
I don't think that was her motivation at all. I think it was more about having that stigma of being a single mom. I think that's what it was.
Is that stigmatized? I mean, being a single mom has been like, I don't know what the social benefits are in the States, but from what I hear, if you're a single mother, I mean, you get more benefits than if you weren't a single mother. And single motherhood is very, very prevalent in a lot of different, lower income communities.
I don't know. That's just her experience, and that's what she's saying. So
yeah, and that's everyone's perception too. It's like if you feel stigmatized, then everyone's
it could be different. I mean, she lives in a small town too, right? So that could be another issue. So the relationship doesn't end great. This is when she ends up getting her cleaning job.
That's what happens when you meet someone on Tinder. It never ends up well.
They didn't have Tinder back then.
Tinder or Grindr or
I don't think it's Grindr either.
I don't know.
So
this was in what year is this in?
I said it's like 2008, 2007, 2008.
There must have been.
Match.com was where she met him.
Or eHarmony has always been a thing for a while. Eh?
Yeah. So anyway, this is when she starts her cleaning job, and she just talks about like how freaking awful it is, and it's disgusting. Like some of the stories she says.
She starts a cleaning job. Cleaning job where?
So it's just first it's just with like this woman that just kind of does it privately, and then it's with like an actual company called Classic Clean.
Kind of like a Sparkles kind of thing?
Yeah, kind of deal. So she does that.
My thing is like, why not? This is me thinking is beforehand, she's talking about landscaping. I'm like, well, why don't you just start your own landscaping company?
So she
and
does.
With cleaning, why don't you start your own cleaning service? Maybe she's going to, I don't know.
She does end up doing like houses on the side for more than what she makes at this place. So when she's only making $8.55 an hour cleaning, and like it's not an easy job.
Cleaning? No, not at all.
What's funny is...
Why do you think most people don't even like cleaning out their own house?
I know. It's funny because the different chapters, they all have titles, and she gives each kind of house that she does different names. And so one of the houses is called the porn house.
Yeah, of course.
Because there's porn magazines out everywhere, and so they leave like
they're not porn magazines. They're classy men's health magazines.
I don't know. And they leave like lube out on the bedside.
That's responsible. Table. You don't want to go in full dry. I mean, come on now.
So, yeah. And so, yeah, it's just really gross. And so what's interesting too is she talks about like how
yeah, there's where you want your, what is it now? The protective PPE. I wouldn't wear PPE going to that house. Forget about when I'm driving around in my car by myself.
Yeah. So she talks a lot about the different clients, the different houses she goes to, and like how much usually she doesn't even see the clients because she's there when they're at work, but she can really infer a lot from just what's lying around their house, right?
That's someone's private life, especially if they're leaving it messy. That's when it's like you can tell who a person is by their mess or something like that. Yes,
yeah. And so she talks a lot about that, and then how different people even treat her. Like she's at this one house where the gentleman is so kind to her and actually calls her by her name, not just the cleaner or the maid. And he's just really kind to her and just, has conversations with her and even like helps her out at times too. Like just really sweet, some of the people, but some of the people are just like jerks and just kind of treat her like
a service person kind of thing. Yeah. It's just like not subhuman, but just like, I'm better than you because I'm paying you to just do a job and just do it.
Yeah. So
it's like, that's where those people, they end up being like asshole bosses or asshole people at work that you don't want to deal with because, if they're in a position of power over you, they'll just be an asshole towards you because that's just their personality. That's just who they are.
Absolutely. Yeah. And
isn't what happened to Tommy Lee and Pamela Anderson, like a cleaner or their cleaning service, found their tape and like,
I don't know.
Maybe it was her in the porn house. Maybe that's what happened.
We'll have to. I think that's like a new series out on one of the streaming services.
Oh, wasn't Sebastian Stan playing?
I don't know.
Tommy Lee.
All I know is that one of my favorite characters from Downton Abbey, that actress was playing Pamela Anderson.
Okay, I thought it was Sebastian Stan or somebody.
I don't know.
Anyways,
I don't know.
But yeah. Anyways, I have no interest in seeing that.
Yeah. So she moved. So the new place that she moves into, after moving out from this boyfriend, is this little teeny tiny studio apartment, and it's really tiny and it's really moldy. It's a really old house. It's really moldy. So they are sick all the time. And
they're just inhaling this mold.
Yeah, and her daughter especially. It's probably like in the walls,
right? So you can't even really clean it.
Yeah, so it's really, really difficult to live there.
And is this subsidized at this point, or is she just paying for it straight up?
No, it's subsidized. It's subsidized, and even she talks about trying to make it into a home as much as she can for her daughter. And she says when everything in her life was chaos, at least she knew that wherever we called home, there'd be pancakes cut in the same way. So she really tried to have that kind of same routine, especially because I think when she went to the dad's house, it was just
disgusting chaos,
disgusting and chaos and awful.
So how old is she, the daughter, at this point, at this new place?
I think she's, I want to say 2 or 3,
Okay.
something like that. And even the daycare, she feels really awful about the daycare she has to send her to because she's always crying when she drops her off. She always gets something like pink eye or something at this daycare. She's just always sick. And even she hears the workers complaining about, they don't get paid enough money to work this job. And so she feels bad she can't even send her daughter to a place where they pay well, right?
Yeah.
So you get what you pay for in terms of childcare, I'm sure. So
man, I couldn't imagine having to send kids to daycare.
Nope.
I don't even care what daycare it is. Just
no.
You're not raising my child.
No.
Especially these crazy people on TikTok. You ain't coming anywhere near my children. It is insane.
No. She talks a lot about like having to give up because the studio apartment is so small, and she has to give up a lot of her like nostalgic type things that she has to give up because there's just no room, and she doesn't really have any place to store them. She does get a little place to store a couple of things with a friend, but what irritated me about it was she was talking about how she's like, oh, I know there's like this minimal movement and people think they're so noble for, you know, getting rid of all of their stuff and living minimally. And she's like, they had a choice to do it. I didn't have a choice. And it's like, well, I think that's a little judgmental, number one.
Like everyone who's a minimalist is entitled. Like everyone. Yeah. I mean, there's that's a voice of resentment there. It seems
that's
to me anyways,
how I felt.
Right?
Yeah. And she says, maybe that was the lesson here. Appreciating the stuff you had, the life you had, using the space you were given. I wish it wasn't a forced journey, but I recognized it was an important part of mine.
So, like, if I want to be completely honest with her, who forced you to get pregnant?
Well,
who made that choice?
Yes.
This is the thing. One of the leading factors of poverty that I know anyways, of why someone's going to be in poverty, whatever, is having kids outside of being married.
Yeah, I know.
So who made that choice?
Yeah.
So you're talking all this stuff. Oh, I don't have a choice. Well, what choices did you make to lead you to this situation? Like, let's be real.
I know.
Let's be real. I know it's tough. And I remember even us, we had to be forced minimalist too, and some stuff that we had to do quite a bit. You know, it's like, oh, well, do we eat? Mm-hmm. Or I guess I have to sell some stuff because we have no money for food, literally.
Yeah.
Am I sitting here complaining about the minimalist people? Like, ew,
I know.
You had to have a packing party. Ooh, you're so lucky. It's like, fuck, man. Like,
I know.
Anyways, again, it's look in the mirror and take a little bit of responsibility. Yeah, it's tough, but no one told you to go fucking around with some other guy and have and have a kid outside of being married and being stable and being able to actually afford having a kid, right? I mean, you make that decision. Again, it's tough. It's
but
harsh.
I mean, like, accidents do happen. Like, we know this.
Yeah, but we also made a decision of say, like, if an accident does happen, this is what we had a plan. The whole thing was planned out.
Yep.
If this was going to happen, then we were at this stage of our lives or whatever that we would make sure things would be, whatever, right?
Yep.
So that's the choice you make. Accidents do happen, but I mean, like, listen, if you're on birth control and you're also using protection, you can get even more crazy and you can start tracking your cycle,
absolutely.
And if that is the case, then okay. But come on, it's probably not. You know what I mean?
The other thing I took issue with was she was talking about her daughter had to end up getting tubes in her ears, and because she was just sick all the time, and so
constant ear infections. Was it to drain liquids or just for helping for hearing?
Well, for both, right? To drain the liquid so you can hear. So, she talks about her treatment when she was with the doctor and how the doctor, she felt like she was like rushed in and out and no one really explained anything to her. And she wondered if it was because her daughter was on Medicaid and if it was because she was a single mom that they treated her this way. And it's like, look, I have been to so many doctors on my own with both kids. It's just always like that.
Yeah.
It's just always like that. And even though I'm very well educated and healthcare and this type of thing is something that's my wheelhouse, it doesn't matter. They still treat you like shit.
Yep.
That's just how it is.
Yep.
So I understand how she could think that, but that's just how it is.
Yeah. No, I can see how that could be irritating to read stuff like that, especially things that we've been through. Yeah. And then someone to always just like, again, come up with some kind of reason, right? Oh, it's not, you know. Mm-hmm. Anyways.
So, yeah. So there's a couple little things like that in the book that it's a little bit like that kind of bother me. Like another thing is she talks about how about an hour of her wage went to putting gas in her car. Mm-hmm. And so I get that. But she says, my clients worked long hours, but it was to pay for lavish cars and boats and sofas and stuff. And it's like, well, again, I feel like that's a little bit.
Yeah. Why don't you like? Here's a movie that this reminds me of is The Pursuit of Happiness. There with Will Smith, and you know he sees the guy driving the lavish car or whatever. Instead of feeling resentment of like, oh, look at these assholes that they work hard just so that they can buy fancy things, he's like, 2 questions for you. He's like, or 1 question. He's like, you know, what do you do, and how do I do it, right? Because he's like, how do I become rich like that? He's like, oh, blah blah, just be good with numbers. And he works his ass off to get there, right? Yes. So instead of complaining about it, why don't you get to the point where you can do that?
Yeah.
And everyone's born, and some people have a better hand than others. Yeah. But it's up to you to figure out how you can get yourself out.
So I definitely.
Which again, I'm sure she does. Obviously, we're reading her book, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. She talks. Then she kind of goes into talking about the whole like food stamp thing. So there's food stamps, and then there's this other thing called WIC, W-I-C. I'm not sure what it stands for. I was going to look it up, and then I completely forgot to look it up. But it's it's like a voucher type thing for food, and it's very specific for the type of food. And she had a really hard time like getting the right amount, because you wouldn't, if you went under how much the WIC coupon gave you, you wouldn't get any change back, and it had to be like a specific like gallons, and it had to be a specific like you could get organic milk sometimes, but then other times you couldn't.
So it's very specific.
It's
on what you
really
can buy.
specific, and it took a lot of time for her to. It wasn't worth it to try and figure out what to get for it. Like it was, she did it.
Yeah,
but
I'm sure it is worth it. But yeah.
Yeah. So she's at the point.
Because it's not just like, here's $50, go to the grocery store.
No, it's like very specific, like milk and like
eggs, bread.
Yeah, that sort of thing. Yeah. And so the point is like there'd be times where there's a lineup forming behind her as her and the cashier are trying to figure out all this WIC stuff. And then she's using food stamps on top of it. And at this one point, this old man behind her is getting like all pissed off at her.
Yep.
And then as she's leaving the store, he yells out to her, "You're welcome. Like my tax money is paying for you." And it's like, you don't freaking know what that person is dealing with. Like, thank goodness we had, like, you know, she has a kid, man. Like, she has a kid she has to feed, and you're going to be like that. It's just, why are people, that's such a dick thing to do.
Did you see, just recently, there was a clip of Mike Tyson punching some guy on a plane.
I saw the clip. I haven't watched it
right.
yet,
It's just some guy. He's just giving him a mouthful of shit, right? Looks like he's just drunk and just like chirping. Like you're chirping Mike Tyson.
What the fuck
is wrong with you? It's like what some guys do. It's like, it's like some idiot was like sticking your dick in a bee's nest. Like, what do you expect is going to happen?
Oh, you're going to get stung?
So of course Mike Tyson just slaps the shit out of him. But I think something that what Mike Tyson said to Joe Rogan at some point, or somebody anyways.
Because Rogan was on Mike Tyson's Hot Boxing podcast.
Oh, Mike Tyson has a podcast?
Yeah, called Hot Boxing.
Interesting.
Because he has like a huge
it's Mike Tyson.
Like marijuana business.
Oh, does he?
Oh, it's huge. Yeah.
No,
yeah.
It's Mike Tyson.
Yeah.
It's got a huge fan base. Man, that guy in the ring in his day was just insane. What am I saying? Oh yeah. So whatever, in one conversation he said, like, the way things are now, because everything's videotaped or whatever, he's like, people think that they could just talk shit without getting punched in the face.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that quote.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what the quote is.
Yep.
But that's like this guy. It's like, you think you just talk shit. Like, you feel like her. It's like you just want to go up to that guy and just punch him right in the face.
Yeah.
It's like you can't
have no idea.
You can't just be an asshole.
You have no idea what someone's
But people
going
now
through.
just like, I could just be an asshole and say whatever I want, because if you touch someone, they'll sue you, blah, blah, blah. It's on social media. You get your life destroyed, blah, blah, blah.
It
right?
just
But
goes.
some people just,
Well, for me,
just need a good slap across the face.
For me, like having been in situations where people cast judgment where they have no fucking clue, like when Tristan used to melt down in the middle of the mall and you just have these disgusted stares at you like, what the fuck kind of mom are you? What the fuck is wrong with your kid? And I'm like, you have no idea what I'm going through. You don't know that my kid has a diagnosis here. Like fuck right off. And so I really felt that in this book, like people are just dicks. And even like one of her friends, when she told her what was going on and she had to move into this homeless shelter, her friend was just like, well, you're welcome. And it's like, a friend is gonna say that to you? That's tough. That's not a friend. Like that person needs to leave from your life. Like that's horrible.
It's hard to know, like, if they're only telling if they're telling the exact truth of the situation of what exactly happened with a friend. But I mean, you read a book, you just assume that they're telling the truth. But it's hard to believe that someone would be like that, of like, oh, I'm your friend or whatever. It's like, oh, I have to move to a homeless shelter. Oh, you're welcome. Like, really? Is that exactly how the conversation went?
Yeah.
But who knows, right? Maybe they had a fight and then something, whatever. But I guess the point is that, I mean, it's believable because some people they're just assholes and they just don't really care. So then, they could be like, well, they're not really your friend.
But then it made her very self-conscious then about what she's buying at the grocery store, knowing she's going to be judged for it. Like, it's like you feel like you can't even just buy like a bag of chips because you're going to be like, oh, this is how you're going to spend the food stamp money? Like, fuck you. You're just going to buy chips.
Right. I don't know if America or even Canada is a place where 50% obesity and just look at what is in the cart of the person in front if they're going to be judging. It's like, really? Look
what's in yours.
Look at what level's your belt at right now,
But then even that like bled over to like even how she spent her time, because she felt like if she even just sat down to read a book, it was just like reinforcing that stereotype of somebody that's lazy on welfare, right? If she wasn't working, she just felt like she couldn't
reading
even
a book
relax.
is working. That's
I know, but I think it goes so deep in like inside, like having that judgment, and then she's also always worried.
She becomes stoic and learn how to block all that shit off.
Yeah, but I think like even it's that constant like state of stress of being judged, waiting for the other shoe to drop, because she had a car and she's just like, I was always just kind of waiting, when is something gonna blow on this thing, and then I'm gonna be fucked because I need my job to get to work. So it's this constant kind of like you're constantly under stress. Like it's really stressful. So, but she does manage to, she writes these like beautiful little anecdotes about her and her daughter's life. And she has like this kind of like online blog that she just posts these little things on, because she wants to be a writer, remember?
Right. So, I mean, this is the internet age back then, starting blogging then. This is what it is. She ends up having this huge blog. But anyways.
And so she says, even though we lived in a place we did and I worked a horrible job and we couldn't afford much, I'd never get this time with her back. Writing about it was my way to appreciate and create a nice picture of our life, our adventures. So I really appreciate that, because I feel like even though you're in the shit, she can still see those magical moments. And it's really, really sweet. And it even reminds me.
That's the thing too, is just because you're poor doesn't mean you can't be happy.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, obviously, she's really poor. So it does, of course, don't get me wrong, it does have a huge burden, but you can still stop and smell the roses every once in a while and appreciate what you do have.
Yeah. And she does get into a car crash, and so her car gets totaled, which isn't great. So, and she says the stress of it all, the exhaustion, leaves us hollowed, scraped out ghosts of our former selves. And I felt that, like I really felt that line, because I felt that in terms of us having been poor. And then on top of that, having the stress of having a kid with a disability. Just you're just exhausted and you're in a constant state of stress. So, and that's how you just feel scraped out, and it's so difficult. So so I thought that was really interesting.
Not knowing what's going to happen, and not knowing, I got these bills to pay, which bill do I pay first, what's the most important thing. And it's constant stress. And if something happens, you're already pushed to the max. What happens when a rubber band is already stretched out as tight as it can. You just put a little bit more pressure and then it snaps.
Yeah.
Or in this case, your bank account snaps or whatever, right? Or your ability to live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
but I imagine she had insurance or whatever to help.
She did.
It's still very stressful.
It was really stressful.
There's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, she had to kind of figure out a way to get. They weren't going to give her very much because the car itself wasn't worth very much. Yeah, so she eventually she did get quite a bit and was able to really help. So.
Yeah, and get another car.
Mm-hmm. So she eventually. But this is the other thing I didn't understand about this book is she was driving to drop her daughter off at the dad's house, and then she was also going to pick her up. And I'm like, what the no, have him drive at least one way. Like, why isn't he driving?
Does he not? Maybe he doesn't have a car.
Maybe he doesn't have a car. I don't know, but I was just like,
that's what I would assume. He just doesn't have a car.
But then I'm just like, I'm not. Then I don't know. Do something else out or give me money for the gas of the car because that's a lot. He's paying
child support.
I don't know. That's different. That's different.
I know. Well, but if she doesn't make it, listen. Yeah, I don't want to get into little details of that.
It just was that just really pissed me off.
Yeah, but it sounds like there's no communication. Why isn't okay? Well, then you meet at a park or somewhere like that, or maybe she doesn't trust him to take her on the bus if there was a bus route or something like that. So she's like, well, I'm going to keep my daughter safe, and the best way that I can do that is just drop her off there.
Yeah.
So there's less.
There's less.
Whatever. So it's a trade-off. Mm-hmm. Who knows? Whatever little details, but
yeah.
It is what it is.
Yeah. So she talks about knowing that it won't always be this way, and she just kind of keeps telling herself her life is not always going to be this way, otherwise the guilt would kind of consume her. And I guess because she talks about having been from a middle class family to begin with, she kind of knew what was possible. She had already kind of been there, which kind of speaks to people that have just always been poor and maybe not know what is possible. If the reason why she had so much hope that she could get ahead was because she knew she had already lived that way, maybe.
I don't know, but people that are poor know what it's like to just not have stuff. Mm-hmm. And you see TV and whatever, and you go around and you know what it's like to be not poor. Yeah. So I think, there is something there. It's like when you're not poor, then you are poor, then you realize, all these things that you have lost. So maybe it does help put a little bit into perspective. But I think people that are poor can have a pretty good idea in their mind what it's like to not be poor. Yeah. So, and how much it would help improve their lives. She does make the hard decision, and she does take out a student loan to go back to school. Oof, so it's at the point where they have to move. Her daughter's just constantly sick, ear infection after ear infection. It's always something. She's having a really hard time, and she can't get any medical attention at all because she can't qualify for it, can't pay for it. Mm-hmm. She's also allergic to all of these allergens where she's constantly cleaning up all this disgusting shit all the time. And she's so socially isolated because she's on her own cleaning all day, and then she sees her daughter for a few hours, and that's it. She has no social life, and her job can't even be social. So she does take out a student loan, and she moves. They find a really nice place to move into. She trades part of the rent for. It's kind of like an apartment above a garage that she lives in, and then there's a family that lives in the main house, so she lives there, and so her daughter plays with their kids' daughters. Oh, that's nice. And so part of the rent agreement is she cleans the house as part of the rent. So so she's taking classes. It was for towards a paralegal degree. So because she knows if that's you can actually get a job as a decent job as a paralegal. And then she's also volunteering, like an ambulance driver kind of thing, or. No, paralegal is a lawyer. Yeah, right. Sorry, paramedic. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So, and then she can also work in a law office and be a clerk or something like that. Yeah. And so she can also volunteer. She volunteers at a domestic violence and sexual assault center as well, because she also she wants to get back and help, which I think I thought was pretty awesome. So when she says, taking on debt and losing a job seemed an enormous risk, but I also had grown to understand something else. It would be extremely difficult to see a different future if all I could think about was making it through to the next paycheck. So she knew she had to take some sort of risk in order to get ahead. And so she does clean houses just on the side,
privately on the side, but she's able to charge like way more than she was getting paid.
Like $50 a day or a day. Sorry, like $50 an hour or something like that. Who knows?
Yep. So she does that. Eventually, she does end up getting a scholarship, and it gives her enough money where she can go to Missoula finally and visit Montana. So she goes just by herself, just to kind of visit.
Who's watching the baby?
I think it's on a weekend that Jamie had her.
Right.
So she goes then. So eventually they move to Missoula. She gets a student loans to do that. And again, she does cleaning on the side when they're in Missoula. And I think it's a bit of a rough transition. Like, her daughter has a bit of a rough time, like, moving there.
That's weird though, because it seems like she was in a good spot with neighbors and kids and someone her daughter's playing with. And
yeah, but even that relationship went bad because the mom was like not happy with her cleaning, even though her cleaning was just fine. But like all of a sudden she found little things to pick in and out. And I think she doesn't say it, but I think part of the problem was she does say about the wife was going to lose her job. So I think it was like a way for her to say, well, we can't afford you anymore, so I'm just going to nitpick instead,
or
saying
try to
I
fire
can't
you
afford.
instead. Yeah,
exactly. And then the other thing was, I think Stephanie and the husband maybe were getting too close. That was for comfort than the wife thought, because they were spending a lot of time together when the kids were playing. Like, they'd go down to the beach together and the kids would play. And so I think maybe that had something to do with it too.
Well, did she have feelings for the guy?
No, not at all. And it was nothing at all. But I think it was just a bunch of things for this wife. And so, yeah. So anyway,
well, that's also not a good look though, if your husband is always spending time with somebody else. But
I think because he was the one taking care of the kids at points too.
Yeah.
So, because I think he was a teacher, so he's home in the summer with the kids and all the kids are playing. So anyway, so they moved to Missoula. She finds work cleaning while she's going to school, and she submits a bunch of her pieces to magazines and they get picked up. And then eventually, she just writes more and more, and then she writes this book and it goes crazy. Like, I think this was on like Obama's summer reading list or something like that. So so when she ends up, she graduates with a degree in English.
Look at this. We spent like an hour talking about all this stuff, and I'm like, my big thing is like, all right, let's get to the point where she starts to be successful. And then it's like, she's have a hard life, whatever. And you know what? And then she just writes and she goes to school and everything's happy ever after. I'm like, what? You just like missed out like the best stuff. But no, so that's cool. So she moves to Montana, goes to school. This is like a 4-year degree that she has to do there. Like
I think she
4-year English,
because
she has her extra credits that she's had. Yeah. So she gets her English degree. So why she's there, I guess it just builds, right? Because she's been practicing her writing. Like you said, she had a blog or whatever.
Yes.
She starts submitting things to magazines and articles, and then they get picked up. So she makes a couple $100 every published article. You get her name out there. You slowly build, and then before you know it, you're an overnight success. It only took 20 years. Yeah. Or whatever. It's fantastic. Yeah. That's a great story.
Yeah. And so she is working on, she did get married. And
she probably got a good deal from this book in terms of getting it picked up on Netflix too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And so she ends up having another kid. And then
with this other guy
she's married. No, I think this is a different relationship. Because he has 2 kids and she has 2 kids. So...
all right, I'm starting to see a little bit of a pattern with her and all these different relationships and different kids.
I don't want to judge. It is what it is. It's not all, it's just 2. So
but I don't know. You're saying she has one daughter or one kid with another guy, or with one guy, and another kid with another guy, and now she's with another guy that has 2 kids, and they're married now. Yep. And that's that. That's where she's at. That's where she's at now.
Yeah. Oh. So.
Well, at least she doesn't have to worry about money now. She can be a true minimalist and get rid of stuff that she really doesn't want. Yeah.
And so she is working on another book now about, I think it's called Class, and I think it's about going to school, having a student loan, and kind of what that's like in terms of like students that don't have to have student loans and those that do. I think
that's going to piss me off. Just listen to what you're saying. Because I know what it's like to go to the school with student loans. I mean, I have 7 years of school, all funded by student loans.
Yeah.
And then you also another 4 years of it. Yeah. I mean, we know what it's like. Did we ever be like, oh, look at all these other assholes that don't have to have a student loan to it never even came up to my mind.
So here I just found the what it's about. So it says class would combine personal experience and reporting as it exposes the outrageous cost, predatory practices, and discriminatory policies faced by Americans who hope education will lead to security and prosperity.
So yes, that's a different angle.
Yes,
and I appreciate that because student loans in America, and even school in general, I think it's the biggest fucking scam now of all time. Like, number one, these loans aren't forgivable, even if you go bankrupt. I think in the States, it's pretty much kind of the same thing. In the States, it is way more expensive to get these degrees. And these degrees are basically useless now because everyone has them. They just give them out like candy. Yeah. Let alone to the fact that they don't even teach shit anymore. All it is like the students have so much power. Like, you know how it is now. Everything is safe space. They teach all this progressive stuff. It's all this stuff that has nothing to do with actually teaching people. It's all this, it's like so political, and you can't even allow other speakers to be on there to teach different point of views. Like, people are getting canceled. Professors are getting censored. Yep. There's all this crazy diversity stuff that's going on. I mean, it's so opposite of what it should be, of an open forum to hear all points of view and dialogue and have rigorous debates.
That's what I was going to say. To have your beliefs, to have everything challenged. Yeah. Like, this is, yeah. So
but it's a business. It's a business. It's like, let's get as many students as we can through the door, get their money, and then get them out.
So she says, here's another quote.
And student loans are very predatory.
So this is another quote. She says, the reality is the way we go about educating our country leaves millions stretched to their limits with almost of half of students wondering how they'll find their next meal, and even more than that, drowning in debts they'll owe for a lifetime.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, so 100%. So I would be really interested to read that book
because you think of student loans, and even for us, I mean, it's about 10 for us in Canada. Even this was back in the late 90s, early 2000s. It's like $10,000 a year, and combined with us, we had like 12 years of student loans. Yeah. You know, that's over $100,000 in debt. And when after you go to the school, you think like, oh, you know what? I'll pay it off when I'm done because I'm going to go get a job, and it's going to be like, I'm going to get paid what? $80,000, $100,000. I'm going to get paid really good money. And then you realize after you finish school, like, you're lucky if you'll get a job. Like, what was my first true job after? I think it was like $44,000 a year. Yeah. Maybe. And then, which is not bad, I guess, especially if you're single, but of course we were together at the time. Yeah. Actually, let me back up. Actually, before we had kids, my first real full-time job was being a hydrogeological tech. And that one, I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was like $2,700 to $3,000 a month bringing in. Right. So, but then after you pay all your food and your rent and everything else, there's not much left to pay off your student loans. And, you know, you pay off $200, $300 a month. You know, it takes like 20 years to pay off. It's like, it's a lot. You think that you can just get all this money and just pay it off easily and quickly. It's like, no. Good luck getting those jobs that pay $80,000, $100,000 that start, unless you go into the right program, which is stuff with computer science and programming and all that kind of stuff, which of course just took off. But the stuff that we went into, just like biology or science, like, everyone had those jobs. And then when we finished school, even when I finished my master's at 2008, right? That was a big crash. Anyways, whatever. Yes, school. And don't get me started on the actual value of the education that you get from school. Everything is online now. Yep. You can get better education on YouTube.
Probably.
Not YouTube so much itself, but even, like Khan Academy, all these things. There's so much knowledge out there.
Just the books that I read.
Just books. Just read
books. All the books that I read. It's incredible.
Yep.
It's incredible what I've learned. So.
You just have to have a willingness to go out there and learn.
Yeah, an open mind, 100%. Yeah.
Even things like Skillshare, all these tools where people just teach whatever you want to learn. It's out there for you.
It is.
Again, if the only thing in school, like if you want to be a doctor, you want to be a lawyer, or an engineer.
But then you know you are going to get the big paycheck if you get that job.
Well,
right?
you
so
still have to be, you still have to make it or whatever. But yeah, but even then it's still, but the, like doctor, lawyer, I mean, in the States, those guys come up with like what, $500,000 of debt when all their stuff is paid for, and it takes like how many years?
Yeah.
That's a lot. And yeah, I guess doctors get paid good money too, but they're also taxed to shit as well too. Like 50% tax, maybe more. That's insane. Anyways.
Indeed. So it'll be interesting to see that book when it comes out.
Yeah.
It's supposed to come out this year. So
Maid. Oh, you want to say something? I was going to ask you.
What were you going to ask me? Go ahead.
Maybe I was just going to ask you 1 to 10 of the story. I know you're not going to give this one a 10. Just from the stuff that you said. But as a book.
Like I'd give it an 8. It was like, it was a good book.
She's a good writer.
She's a good writer. But yeah, there's a couple of things, like I said, like that. It's just like, I feel like it was a little, like you said, like some resentment there and some like, and that's the thing.
But
is
it's
like,
not like it's fair to have that resentment.
It's
living
fair,
through poverty.
It's fair
not
for
fun.
sure, but it's like, you don't know those people's stories that have, like we're talking about, right, with empathy. You don't know how hard those people have worked to get to the point where they can own a boat or whatever. You don't know what they've gone through. So I think it's really not great to make a judgment on people like that. But like, I understand like the people that get like things like government assistance and food stamps are not just the people sitting around on their couch doing nothing. Like, these people freaking work their asses off. These are hardworking people, and judging them is not okay. Judging anyone is not okay.
It's like poor people judging rich people because, oh, you're just born rich and you just have nothing, and then rich people judging poor people, oh, you're poor because you don't work hard. And it's like there's a mix. And now too is, with that Ray Dalio video, maybe we should point and link to that, the changing world order or whatever. As you get to the point too when people do get richer and then their kids are kind of rich, and those are the ones that kind of but it's few and far in between because the gap between rich and poor just keeps growing. We should link to that video if anyone hasn't seen that. It's just a neat video.
It's really cool. And just like how she's a great mom, and all she's doing is trying to give her daughter the best that she possibly can. And like the mom guilt that she talks about, like that hits hard because regardless of who you are, you have mom guilt.
She puts on probably pretty thick, I imagine, in the book.
Well, just especially like I can't imagine having to drop your kid off in a place where you don't want them to be, but not really having a choice because you have to work. So yeah.
How old's your daughter right now?
I think she's probably like a teenager by now. So, but overall it was like eye-opening. I think for people that have never had to struggle with like financially, I think it's definitely something that people should read to really understand what it's like.
So inspiration wise, then I guess it's pretty
inspirational. She knows that education and following her dream is what's going to get her out of there. And it's like she didn't give up. Like, she just didn't give up trying to get that
even
education.
Though you made it sound like it was an overnight success there at the end.
I know. Yeah.
Just like
but that's how it is in the book. That's how it is in the book. Right.
Because that part's not the interesting part. The interesting part is what she went through. Yes. And it's like, I went through all of this and then look how I came out. Because once you build that snowball of success or whatever, it takes forever to build it. But then once it just starts rolling down the hill, it's not as exciting anymore because it just builds that momentum all on its own. So that's cool. So there's not really anything that we can take as, is this what we want to do in our life or whatever, right? Like, no,
but it's inspirational to the point, even though if you feel like you are at the bottom and there's always hope, and there's always, as long as you work hard, you can get there. And I think that's what this shows is like,
there's one thing about hustle culture, and I need to think more about this because I'm definitely of the mindset of like, yes, hustle is good and you need to work hard, but you also need to work smart, because just because you work hard doesn't mean you're going to get there. And why I think about that is like, think of all the different things that we've tried so far. We've worked ridiculously hard on a lot of these things, but none of it has ever really amounted to a lot of success. So it's also about working smart, and it's also about finding balance. Like, it's not like, oh, if you just work 18 hours a day and you're always on your computer and you're just grinding it out all the time, you're going to be successful. It's not guaranteed. No. So you also have to work smart as well too, knowing that you're doing something that, number one, that you love, that you're not going to burn out And that also to have something that is going to provide value to people. Because if whatever you're doing, it's not going to provide value. I don't care how hard you hustle, it's not going to be successful. Matter. So absolutely, you still have to be smart about it. Mm-hmm. So, anyways, just a little tip, from, I don't have it figured out. When our company makes $1 million, then we could start talking about,
tips.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. We're not going to be a guru of like, hey, you want to know how to make $1 million? Just do this. Like, have you made $1 million? No. What the fuck are you talking about? Yeah. So anyways.
Cool.
Oh, well, I think that's done. That's the cue to being done. Yeah. Great book. Yeah, I enjoyed listening to the story. Again, I love hearing people that have gone through the struggles, at least financially.
Yeah.
And came out, Shawshank Redemption, crawled through the river of shit and come out clean on the other end. Love it. Love it. Me too. So that's it. Thank you so much for listening.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for watching. We appreciate your support as always. Be sure to check out our website, odumandandrea.com. And with that, crisp high five. Let's get to work, right? So we can get our book deal signed by Netflix. Sweet. Even though we hate them. I love you, Netflix. Sign my new book coming out. Oh God.
Anyways.
All right. Have a good one.
Have a good week.
See you next time.
Bye.